Cardinal.
RCP chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, roll with Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Fighting outside SC off. Bring in SC off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Hello and welcome to NSF Live. It's that time of the week where we go over all of the cool, awesome, inspirational space news that's going on here in the US and around the world. I think most of what we have today will probably focus on the US here. I am Stephen Marr. I'm a photographer here for NASASpaceflight. With me today, let's see which side this points to. I've got Thomas Burghardt. How you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing well. Good to be on. How you doing, Stephen?
Pretty good. And on the other side, I think a new face to NSF Live. First time on, Adrian Beil, right?
Yes, thank you. First time here.
You guys may know Adrian as the spreadsheet guy, the spreadsheet master, the one that kind of times things and takes notes and has data analysis going at all times when there's Starship stuff happening because, well, we don't get the inside scoop. SpaceX doesn't tell us what the timing is going to be like for static fires or cryo tests or anything like that. A lot of what we know is thanks to Adrian Beil over here. So we appreciate the work that you're doing for us.
I'm doing my best. Thank you.
And also the newest NSF writer, Adrian, as well, got his writing debut earlier this week, so would be amiss not to mention that.
True.
Yeah, amazing to have that first article. That was just a fun experience.
Very cool. Well, the first thing that we want to talk about today, because, well, it's still kind of close on the front of my mind because it was so awesome to experience, was the arrival of Shortfall of Gravitas. Thomas and I, along with Julia, we got to take a little helicopter ride, and I hope you were watching Fleet Cam because Thomas provided some awesome live views. Look at this. And I'll tell you, this was actually sort of a test, but you know, like when a test goes so well, it's like, well, you might as well deploy it, right?
Yeah, just peeking behind the curtain a little bit here, we went out to this and said, okay, we want to see, can we broadcast from a helicopter? Is the signal strength strong enough? Because you stay pretty close to the ground. So like, we just want to check out all the technical stuff and make sure that that's possible. And then all of a sudden, on our way back in, I see a notification on my phone that DOS had pushed the video live to Fleet Cam. And we're like, all right, I guess it was working well then. So got some live views of a Shortfall of Gravitas, and maybe we'll pull that trick back out of the hat when there's some extra special part returns or something like that. But yeah, it was super exciting to see the new drone ship come into Florida.
Yeah, and it looks just as awesome as I had hoped. You know, just slick black, brand new paint. All the gear in all the gear in the rear, and clean looking. It's got the tapered edges. Yeah, look at that. So sharp.
And we're all, of
Looks
course, very
amazing.
excited to support a new higher flight rate here at Cape Canaveral. So when the launches get ready to ramp back up, we'll have 2 drone ships again. And then, of course, I Still Love You will be out getting ready on the West Coast. So the whole SpaceX recovery fleet will be in full force, ready for launches to ramp back up again.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I noticed when I was going through the photos, see, when you're in the air and you're just trying to grab as many photos as you can, you don't really have a whole lot of time to notice things, but it seemed like they just barely fit a Shortfall of Gravitas right by that circle. Like they almost didn't squeeze it in there. And here's the view from Rusty's, of course.
Yep.
You know this view well. You've seen many Falcon 9s come in with this view, and of course the fairing catchers, RIP. Yeah, what else do we have to say about this? Is there any other insight or anything you want to offer, Thomas or Adrian? What were you doing? What were your thoughts on it?
I was just enjoying seeing it finally after being teased so long by Elon. It was great to finally seeing it arrive, and yeah, it looks as cool as I imagined it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking forward to seeing how this will affect the operations, I think, because Elon talking about how this one is fully autonomous and does not require a tug. I think that's, generally speaking, sounds like that will be true. I mean, but the one bit we're anxious to see about is how it will enter and leave port, if that might still require a tug, and then once they get past a certain point, it will go and operate autonomously, go sit out at the landing zone. It'll be interesting to see how exactly that works, but that is the big improvement here, that you don't need a tug with it the entire trip out and back. So that'll be something to see, and hopefully can help them maybe quicken their turnarounds between flights and things like that. And overall just kind of streamline their recovery operations. That'll be definitely interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the general consensus among like the fleet stalkers that I've talked to is we're all kind of assuming that it's still going to be towed out of port, and it'll be interesting to see how far it has to be towed, if it goes all the way to the landing zone or maybe just past the horizon, international waters, whatever. I'm not sure what the legal rules are.
Right.
Like what is it that they, what are they bound by? But we'll find out soon enough. Although when we were talking about it before the show, one of y'all pointed out, I think it was you, Thomas, that said, well, we might be waiting another month to find out,
Yeah.
because we're in one of these super rare launch lulls. Rare nowadays. I mean, back in the day, this
Yeah.
was kind of normal to have like maybe 1 or 2 launches a month, but we have not. See, the last launch that we had from SpaceX was the 30th of June, and that doesn't seem that
Yep.
long. A little over 2 weeks ago. But the next launch that we'll have here from the Cape isn't until July 30th, which of course is Starliner. And well, I don't want to jump the gun. We will talk about some Starliner stuff, but is there anything else ASOG related? I think we pretty much got it last week, but is there anything else?
If Chad has any questions about it,
Oh, I should probably pull up the panel. Or I have it pulled up, but let's
because
see.
of course, if you have questions, tag us in chat. That's why we do it live. Otherwise, we just pre-record this and publish it, and then we do something else on our Saturdays.
Well, Urban SpaceX Man said, "Do you think ASOG will be faster getting to the landing zone?"
Probably not. It's got the exact same thrusters as just read the instructions, so I think its speed is probably the same, or at least very, very close. Of course, now that I said that, Gavin will DM me and say, "No, it's going to be 50% faster" or something. I don't know, because Gavin and Julia know these kind of things, but I don't think that's the. I think the main upgrade is just it doesn't require a tug to get out there and back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that seems to be the case. All right, well then, yeah, there you have it. If you want to know more, if you want to see like what all the different little things are on the deck of ASOG, tune into last week's episode if you missed it, because we had Gavin on talking about Shortfall of Gravitas, pointing out things that he noticed. And yeah, so
We've
for now
also
we are
got
going. Oh,
a fresh article on NASASpaceflight.com covering a Shortfall of Gravitas and another couple minor fleet updates too. So if you would like some written news coverage of the SpaceX fleet, that's there too.
right. All right. Well, now I think we move on to billionaires in space. If you were living under a rock, then I'm here to tell you that it was Sunday, right? The 11th.
Yes.
Virgin
Yes.
Galactic launched their first people other than the pilots, because as we
Right.
know, every test flight with the Spaceship 2 has had pilots. But this is the first time that they've had, and they're not even paying customers, but they are someone on board other than the pilots. Of course, they did have, what is her name?
Beth Moses.
Beth Moses. She was the first one other than pilots to fly. But
Right.
look at it. Yeah, here goes Spaceship 2 taking off, engines running. And yeah, what was y'all's takeaway from this flight? We had Jack out in the field, so actually I asked you a question and then I take the reins back. But we had Jack out in the field, and we had the drop and engine ignition before anybody had it, right? We were so far ahead that we were able to kick back over to the Virgin Galactic stream and watch a replay. Right?
Yeah, we had Jack Beyer out there in the field for NSF, and we were the only ones broadcasting the takeoff live because Virgin Galactic stream had not gone live by then.
Right.
So we saw them take off from Spaceport America in the first place. And I mean, just look at this awesome footage of the crew doing their somersaults in microgravity. Richard's giving a whole monologue before he unstraps himself, but
Right.
so cool.
And
this video is just awesome to watch, I think.
If you notice, I don't remember who it was that pointed it out, but he's got two gray straps over his shoulders, and then whenever he gets back in his seat, he's only got one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, as this video plays, we'll probably see it. But I thought what he had to say to the kids was pretty cool. You know, he's like, when I was a kid, you know, I dreamed about going to space, and here I am now, an adult, and I'm flying in a spaceship with other adults. You know, I hope kids.
It was a really inspirational talk, and I kind of had to watch it on a small iPad during a barbecue because I was invited to a barbecue during the launch. So I was struggling with that small iPad and looking at the altitude, and yeah, it was a special experience.
And what was the actual? What was the apogee that they reached?
280 feet.
Yeah, it was something. It was in the mid 80s in kilometers. It might have been 85 or so.
I think it was 85.9 was
something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, so did they go to space?
Oh gosh, we haven't. Is that what we're going to talk about? We're having. Well, I mean, we have to segue it into the other billionaire going to space. So I guess that's a segue we can make.
Yeah.
Yes, this flight goes to space by any practical definition. You can throw out your arbitrary 100-kilometer line that's not the actual Kármán line as much as you want, but I'll defend. A lot of people say, "Oh, Virgin Galactic, they're using the 80-kilometer line because that's how high their spacecraft reaches, and they're just using that definition out of convenience."
Yeah,
I can't fault the 80-kilometer line any significant way, and so I will defend their claim that yes, that counts as a space flight 100%.
Well, what do you, just briefly, what do you qualify as going to space?
So,
not
in
just
a nutshell,
number, but what makes you say that 80 kilometers is good enough for you?
So yeah, it's hard to define when the atmosphere and what is practically outer space kind of meet. The atmosphere goes hundreds of kilometers up in very, very thin form. So, I mean, a little higher than the ISS orbits in. I don't think anyone can argue that the ISS is not in space.
Right.
So that's undeniably a spaceflight environment. And so, in a nutshell, we use this thing called a Kármán line, which was a calculated distance where, in order to go fast enough to have lift, you have to be going orbital velocity. And at that point, that seemed like a logical place to put the boundary between the two. And that number is actually like 83 kilometers or something like that. Somewhere down the line, a regulatory agency who didn't like the number 83 rounded it up to 100, and that became the Kármán line. And then, more recent research from Jonathan McDowell, who we've talked to a bunch, says no, it really should be closer to 80 kilometers, if that's the kind of logic you want to use to define the boundary. And so that sort of, if you take that to be the definition, you get around 80 kilometers. You can also have stuff in orbit pass through, I think, like 90 kilometers or so, and still go through several perigees at that altitude without decaying. So it's kind of hard to argue that altitude isn't space.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we're erring on the side of using that 80-kilometer boundary, which satisfies Virgin Galactic. However, the folks at Blue Origin will point out that there are still definitions out there that say it's 100, and that's why their rocket, New Shepard, goes above 100 kilometers. So there are no asterisks next to your name, or whatever marketing wordage they want to use there.
Yeah. I agree with you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Adrian.
No, I just think that there was a lot of talks about the 80 kilometers line and the 100 kilometers line. And in the end, I think the experience won't be that much different between those two in terms of how high are you going, and I don't think any customer will be bothered by just being at 80 kilometers instead of 100.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
The view isn't that different.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's more about the experience than what arbitrary number you went to. If you're up high enough that you look at one side and it's the inky blackness of space speckled with stars that aren't twinkling, by the way, and you look down and you see the curvature of the Earth. I'm imagining you can look out towards the horizon and you can see that thin layer of atmosphere, just like the astronauts talk about, and see the curvature of the Earth. I think that what they're going for is to give people that experience of seeing the Earth as a finite ball of it's spaceship Earth, right?
Mm.
And I think that if you get that experience, then that's good enough for me. I mean, nobody's going to see your wings on there that Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin gives you, and they're not going to be like, oh, you must be a NASA astronaut that's trained your whole life to do this. Maybe we should come up with another name for it, like a tourist astronaut or something like that. But I wouldn't take anything away from them. You went to space, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and
And
also the experiences are so different. Like if you think the Virgin Galactic thing, you take off on an airplane, and so you have this nice long gradual ride up to your altitude. You have all that time for where technical checks and stuff are happening, and so you've got all of that kind of build up. And if anything is not quite right, you've got plenty of time to come back and land just as a normal airplane and work on that. And then of course, even if there's an issue after release, you have to glide back down. So that's kind of a different experience. I think it is probably would be cool to experience the release from a carrier airplane, the couple seconds of free fall, and then push back into your seat by the rocket motor and then tilt up into space. That would be a super cool experience. And then on the other hand, you have what you more think of as like a rocket launch, where you're sitting with pretty much dead silent. The rocket starts coming to life around you, and then you have a countdown and ignition and a liftoff, which would also be super cool, but completely different than the Spaceship Two experience. And then you're falling under a parachute versus landing like an airplane. All of those things, though, I mean, I would be worthwhile to experience both. To be honest, if you're if you've got the resources and are super enthusiastic about spaceflight, those are two completely different experiences that both of which sound super cool.
Yeah. I agree. And everybody, I am sorry that was me with the Discord sounds.
Oh
I have this button on my mixer that's like, if you press it in, then y'all don't have to hear my computer sounds, and it was depressed. So you had to hear all my Discord sounds. So you heard every little bigoop bigoop in the background of
Was
them
that
saying,
all the beeps of us telling hey, someone's got their Discord sounds on?
Yeah. That's exactly. So I apologize, chat. I'm sure.
Uh-oh, did we lose Stephen now?
I think so.
By turning off his Discord sounds, he actually broke his internet. Oh no. Alright, we'll get Stephen back in a second. I will carry on. Let's see, do we have questions about, Virgin Galactic and Spaceship Two and stuff? Let me find something. Alright, so we'll talk about Blue Origin, because I've got a question here from a Night Shared. Saying, Blue Origin, any idea who the mystery ticket holder is who might have a scheduling conflict? So so we'll talk about the crew that has been selected for New Shepard Flight 16, which is the first crewed flight of New Shepard. Unlike Virgin Galactic, they did not conduct all of the test flights on New Shepard were uncrewed. It was a completely autonomous rocket launch and landing. Spaceship Two requires pilots, so all of their test flights had people on board. The crew on board will, of course, include the founder, Jeff Bezos, which was the whole Jeff Bezos versus Richard Branson thing. Jeff Bezos is also bringing his brother, Mark, as well as Mercury 13 astronaut, or astronaut candidate, I guess is the technical term, Wally Funk, who was one of the very early astronaut, sort of part of the astronaut program trying to get women astronauts, which, of course, never happened. But Wally Funk getting her ride to space on New Shepard, and then also what they're calling the first paying customer, which was actually supposed to be the winner of this big auction they did a while ago. The seat sold for $28 million, and it turns out that that person has a scheduling conflict. Now, I don't know what kind of scheduling conflict you have to not go to space that day. Also, at the time of the auction, the date of the launch was already public. It was July 20th. It's still July 20th, this coming Tuesday. So I don't know where the confusion comes up when you're bidding $28 million on a spaceflight seat and all of a sudden you have something come up. I hope it's not something last minute, like, something happened to a family member or something like that. But, basically, that person will fly on a future New Shepard flight, is what Blue Origin says. And in the meantime, the runner-up to the auction was a hedge fund manager who bid something just below $28 million, and their son, whose name is Oliver, who you see here, will be the passenger, the fourth passenger on board New Shepard. So Oliver did not pay for the seat, but his dad paid for the seat, and Oliver will actually become the youngest person to ever go to space, and Wally Funk will be the oldest person to ever go to space. So that's kind of a cool sort of partnership there. But that's sort of their crew, and yeah, I don't know about that scheduling conflict. That is confusing to me, but it sounds like they'll just be flying later. So sort of a random and interesting crew that will be flying along with Jeff Bezos on New Shepard on Tuesday.
Yes, I'm really excited for that, but I don't really buy that story about scheduling conflicts.
conflict.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
want
not
to
like
get
you forget.
I don't want to get like tinfoil hat conspiracy theory about it, but that doesn't make any sense to me. I just guess it's very extraneous circumstances,
I just forgot about my scheduled space flight. Happens all the
Yeah.
time.
So do you guys have me back? Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you, Stephen. I don't think we have your video yet, though.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. Here.
We can hear your soothing voice.
Uh,
We're just talking about what kind of scheduling conflicts you have to not go on a New Shepard flight. That seems,
yeah, I don't understand that either. Because they knew when the date was, so why would you pay that
Right.
much? I mean, if it turns out that it was like, family emergency, medical
Right.
emergency, something like that, then we're all going to be like, oh, well, that is 100% understandable.
Yeah.
Take it away. I'm going to try to fix this video thing.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I'll keep looking in chat. If you have questions about some of the suborbital space tourism stuff, I'd love to. There's a whole lot of angles we can take on this. Trying to think. Oliver is from the Netherlands, and I guess all of the three other people are Americans. But technically an international crew on New Shepard too, chat points out. Hey, there's Stephen.
Hey, look at there. Unplug and replug. That's the name of the game.
The classic always works, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. All right. So where are we at? So what time is this flight happening? I saw a tweet where they were saying tune in at 11:30 Central Time to for the pre-flight briefing.
Yeah, tomorrow they're doing a briefing, and then the flight is the next day on Tuesday.
Oh wait. Oh, tomorrow's Sunday. Oh, right. And the flight.
Actually, did it say Sunday or
20th?
Tuesday?
Yeah.
They did just.
I am
hold on.
not sure.
I'm pulling up Twitter, folks. We got to get this sorted out.
Well, I know that the flight is supposed to be July 20th because that's the anniversary
Yes.
of the moon landing.
Yep.
So tomorrow we're going to get a pre-flight briefing.
6:30 a.m. CDT at July 20.
Is the
we
broadcast for Blue Origin. I believe
Yes.
the flight restriction starts an hour and a half after that. So we're looking at about 9 a.m. Eastern time here in the United States is the no earlier than for the actual launch.
Yeah.
Blue Origin will have coverage ahead of time. NASASpaceflight will have live coverage of this launch. But it looks like they're doing some sort of briefing tomorrow at noon Eastern time. So don't know what that will entail, but we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. But the flight is on Tuesday.
All right. And did y'all already touch on who Wally Funk is? Because I think that story is super cool.
Yeah, really briefly, one of the Mercury 13 female astronauts who never got to go to space, and getting her a chance, that's super cool. And will be the oldest person to go to space.
Right, alongside the youngest.
Yes.
Such a cool story. That's it will be amazing to see her reactions to the flight. I bet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. I mean, she looks so full of life. I'd never seen her. I'd heard of her, but I'd never like seen like her personality. And she just looks just so full of energy and so excited to go. Um, and she's waited for so long, so it's really cool that she's getting this opportunity. And yeah, flying with old Jeffy B and brother Mark. And
Is that what we're calling him now?
Jeffy
that's what I'm
B.
calling him right now, Jeffy B. Hey, let's look and see if we've got any. Oh, and I look over here on the panel and I see where everyone was saying something about Discord notifications.
Oh no.
Let's see. Um,
Yeah, Jeffy B. It's canon now.
It's canon.
Oh, here's a good point. Amiga Clone said John Glenn will still be the oldest to go to orbit.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oldest to space and oldest to orbit, two different criteria, but
Yeah.
very good point.
All right. And Yazata or Yazata, are you going to roll Jack out to West Texas to do a stream?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yep.
we will have that live.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Let's see, anything else about New Shepard's flight?
Jeez,
Super stoked.
I mean, it could be pointed out. We should point out. So obviously, both of these systems have the space tourism aspect. That's what they were originally designed for. The idea that we want to enable people to take a brief vacation to space, if you will, experience, the overview effect and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That's what the systems were originally designed for, but there's other aspects to that. Both of these vehicles also serve as research platforms. NASA has flown payloads, universities have flown payloads on all of these previous test flights, taking advantage of those couple minutes of microgravity. And so that's another experience that these systems offer. Both of these systems are fully reusable and are relatively smaller compared to orbital systems, so the cost of operating these systems are, in theory, relatively low because they're competitive in commercial systems. We don't have actual numbers, but they are designed to be low-cost systems. And then with regard to New Shepard specifically, you also have to remember this is also sort of a pathfinder or a demonstrator for technology that will apply to New Glenn. They want to propulsively land their giant New Glenn booster to be a vehicle similar in sort of capabilities to Falcon Heavy as an orbital launch vehicle, and all of these New Shepard flights feed into that development program. So there's technology development aspects to the New Shepard system as well. So it's not just as simple as billionaires paying lots of money to go to space, rich people paying a lot of money to go to space, though that is part of it. And one thing to keep an eye on now that they are flying customers will be, all right, if the first flights are, millions of dollars, thousands of dollars to get a seat, what does that do to the cost eventually down the line, a couple of years? Does that mean kind of like how aviation had early ticket prices on an airplane were for the ultra rich? Nowadays, you can get a ticket on a low cost airline for 50 US bucks.
Yeah.
Will that same thing happen to suborbital spaceflight? I hope, and I think that is the goal. Whether it happens in practice or how long it takes remains to be seen. But that's the big thing. If we can get space tourism that isn't just a 1%er thing, is a thing that you can choose. We can take a week-long vacation to someplace tropical, or we can have this astronaut experience. Like if that's a similar price point, I think you can say that you have opened up spaceflight to the general population. And that would be something super cool and valuable to do.
Right. Yeah. That's sort of the point that I usually make when I talk about it. It's like I don't expect these flights to ever be like a couple $100s because
Right.
just take the cost of the fuel, and
Or at least
divide it
not
by how many-
anytime soon.
Yeah. But just the cost of the fuel, which I don't know what the cost of the fuel is, but I know it's a lot. It's in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands for New Shepard. I know that Elon said with Falcon 9, it's like a couple $100,000 to fuel it.
Right.
And I imagine
and New Shepard should be less than that, simply being a smaller vehicle. But
right, but you divide it by a potential 6 people on board, and so you're still talking probably the tens of thousands to fly, or maybe maybe we get into the 5 to 8,000. But that's the sort of thing that, like, if you really want to have that experience, you could save up and do that. It might take you a while, but you could do it. It's like, it's like Elon said, as far as point to point travel with Starship, the goal is to get it down to what it normally costs to fly internationally.
Right.
And so then you could be talking, a few $1,000s, which is something that a lot of us could at least come up with. I don't have that just sitting on the nightstand waiting to spend on something. But if tomorrow they were like, hey, you can buy a ticket on Starship for $3,000 to go to wherever, go to Germany to go visit Adrian.
Might not be the best time.
But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think it also would be another potential money income for all these space companies. You don't only have to rely on research and resupply to a space station. You would also have these commercial, like almost airliner flights that also would generate money to research and develop more awesome, cool space vehicles, which is amazing.
It's what we need. It's I think I said it last week, or maybe it was on a Starship stream or something. The time we're in right now is sort of like when humans were first figuring out how to harness fire. We didn't know what the potential was with fire, but now we've done a lot of cool stuff with it. And once we really get good at getting into space and making it possible for anybody, because when we first figured out fire, I bet not everybody was allowed to mess with it. But if we could get to the point where anybody can go to space if they want to, where there's actually jobs in space for, like maybe it's blue collar jobs where you don't know how to pilot the ship that you're on, but you know how to do the job once you get there wherever you're going.
Right.
Maybe you're helping to mine an asteroid or someplace on the moon, or some kind of manufacturing that's easier to do in orbit. There's all kinds of possibilities. We just have to get through this hurdle here, where we're just kind of learning how to get off the ground and make it cheap.
And also worth mentioning that not all the passengers on both of these systems are going to be tourists and private astronauts like that, in that sense, because even on the Spaceship Two flight, one of those astronauts was actually there to act as a researcher and evaluate the experience of conducting microgravity research on Spaceship Two. That wasn't autonomous, just sitting in the back doing its own thing while the pilots flew it, but actually, and a researcher actually interacting with the hardware and conducting the experiment in microgravity, like we do on the International Space Station usually. That was part of that test, and that same thing can happen on New Shepard and Spaceship Two, where astronauts go there to conduct research if you can't design the experiment to kind of run itself. So that there's other uses for the people on board other than tourists.
And I think I saw that because I saw, in the footage of them floating around in the cabin, I saw a big grin, but also like it looked like, I can't remember which one it was, but or I can't remember her name. It wasn't Beth Moses. It was the other girl. But she had like, it looked like a caulking gun or something. She had in her hand, and it looked like she was like forcing a plunger into a thing, and I don't know what it was, but she had something in her hands that she was. It seemed like she must have been conducting the experiment. Do you know? I believe
her name is Sarisha Bandela. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But that was the astronaut who was there for research purposes. Yeah.
Okay, so perfect. Yeah. So and that was the one that it's like they're all floating around having fun, and she's just like, I don't know. It like I said, it looked sort of like a caulking gun tube kind of thing. I'm not sure what she was doing, but I think she was doing the physical part of the experiment during that. But still having a great time. Like you could tell that it was that she was thrilled to be there.
Also, maybe just speculating here. If you have other astronauts who go on long missions for maybe to the moon or to Mars, you could prepare them for launching and giving them more capabilities to test on these vehicles because they can experience a launch there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you get a lot of different sensations in a short period of time. Like Thomas mentioned, being dropped. Like if you're doing Virgin Galactic, you'd be dropped, and then you get all that thrust, and you go up, and then you get the 0G. You come back, and then the G's slowly start to come back. Like a crash course in physical physical actions on your body,
Yeah.
things you might experience. I noticed. I don't know which one of y'all put this in the queue, but Nathan Westwick said, "Wasn't Wally Funk signed up to fly on Virgin Galactic? Was that something?
Not that I'm aware of.
It was popped
Never
up in the
heard that.
queue. All right, yeah, I'd never heard it either, but I saw it in our queue here, and I was like, oh, maybe somebody knows something about that. Oh, I'm looking
Michael
in
in
our
our
back channel. Yeah.
is telling us that she is a Virgin Galactic ticket holder. Is or
Oh.
was. Well, it was at one point at least. I mean, like I pointed out, they're both very different experiences. Maybe she will end up flying on both.
Yeah.
But that is interesting. Thank you for checking on that.
That would be really cool to have someone fly on both vehicles and then can tell about the differences between both experiences.
I bet that will happen. I bet there is someone who is enthusiastic enough about spaceflight, but also has deep enough pockets that they can do that. And well, I wonder who will be first. I think is my question. I doubt that will happen eventually. I wonder who will do it first, though.
Yeah, it's like you have roller coaster connoisseurs. You know, maybe you'll have suborbital spacecraft connoisseurs.
And then after they do their suborbital flights, does that mean they buy a ticket on a Dragon next? Give the orbital experience a try?
Yeah, which I'm not sure anything could beat, unless you just don't want to be up there that long. But
yeah, like there are downsides to being in orbit for several days, but
yeah. I wonder if they'll have like single day trips, because I could almost see like that being pretty cool. Just do a single day trip. You probably won't
get a
have
couple
to use
orbits
the bathroom while you're there.
True.
You won't have,
also, the price point is significantly different for an orbital flight. As low cost as Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon are designed to be, still twice the amount that was bid on a New Shepard flight, and that's not the price to New Shepard. That's how much someone was willing to pay to be first and fly with Jeff Bezos. That's an inflated price for what it costs to take a seat on New Shepard. So
right, yeah, we still don't know. They still haven't said officially what the cost of the ticket will be. I'm guessing somewhere around $500,000. It's just
$500,000 or so, maybe lower half of that, but yeah.
I mean, at some point they have to announce the prices.
Yeah, at some point.
You would think.
You would think.
Let's see. I just noticed there's a couple super chats that just snuck in here. Dank Jeb coming in asking, will you be able to get video of New Shepard's launch? I thought the area was closed. Yeah, which we probably answered your question after you asked that. But yeah, we've got Jack. He's going to roll out there and get us some live footage, and you'll be able to watch that right here on our YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed and all that good stuff. Turn on that notification bell so you can get that notification whenever that happens. Let's see. Musical Wolves wanted to know, can you compare New Shepard and spaceship turbulence? Wonder what the differences would be there.
So the turbulence that you experience in an airplane would kind of only apply to the Spaceship 2 system. Although if you see, there are some videos out there of like people stabilizing the video from a New Shepard flight. I don't know if anyone's done it with Jack's footage. I'm sure Jack's footage is some of the best out there, so I bet it was part of that. But can show you that during the ascent of Spaceship 2, remember that's a manually piloted vehicle. It's not on autopilot or anything, and so there's a fair bit of twisting and turning a little bit as the pilots pull it faster and faster and get up towards space, but once you have engine cutoff and you're in that freefall mode, you're in weightlessness. There's no turbulence. You're very still, very stable in that sense.
Right.
On the New Shepard experience, on the way up, you're going to have the vibrations of a rocket launch and things like that, which isn't really turbulence, slightly different thing. But it'll be probably a little rough. Granted, no one's flown on it yet, so don't have any testimonials regarding that yet, but we'll see. But then again, once the engine cuts off and the capsule separates, you're in weightlessness, and it's going to be very smooth. And then on the way back down again, you'll have some turbulence on the way down. Having not been on either vehicle, I'm not in no position to compare the two, but gives you the idea of two different experiences.
All right, I think that's got it for for the upcoming New Shepard flight. Let's see what else we've got on the docket. Oh yes, we have well, if you were up super early, and well, I don't know what part of the Earth you're standing on.
It wasn't
But,
that early for Adrian. It was early for me and Stephen.
Yeah, it was very early for us, and very early for one Chris Gebhardt, who strolled out to Kennedy Space Center to see the rollout of Starliner that'll be launching here in a couple of weeks. Let's see, we got that. Yeah,
It's
you
going to
can see it
appear out
coming
of the side of this building.
Yeah, what's the name of that building? It used to be the shuttle processing facility, right? Is that what it's
So
called?
the building that Starliner is processed in is the C3PF, which is the commercial crew. Oh God, there's 3 C's. What's the third one? Capsule, maybe? And something processing facility.
Would make sense.
Yeah, I think it might be commercial crew capsule, but I know it's commercial crew. Maybe I'm getting the capsule wrong. But that's where Starliners are now being processed. When he zooms out, I'll see if it's the correct building. I think it is that building that they're coming out of.
With the Starliner painted on the side.
Yeah, it's got a huge mural on the side. Boeing likes to put giant murals on the side of their factories. If you look at their aircraft factories, they do the same thing. It actually looks really, really cool.
And this is the building where the the bay doors have the slit for the tail.
Yes,
for
because
shuttle's
these
tail.
space shuttle orbiters used to be processed in these same buildings. It was very cool. But this is the Orbital Flight Test 2 spacecraft, and
Why is
rolling
it called
out
Orbital Flight Test 2, Thomas?
Well,
Oh,
there
no.
was once upon a time there was an orbital flight test that went less than perfectly. They accomplished a lot of objectives, but a major one being docking to the space station was not accomplished. You guys remember there was a mission elapsed timer anomaly, which basically means that the clock on board Starliner basically it picked when it grabbed whatever time it was from the Atlas V rocket that it will launch on. It pulled the wrong piece of data. And so the clock on Starliner, which times all of the events throughout the flight, when to conduct certain maneuvers and things like that, was about 11 hours off. So as soon as it separated from the Atlas V, it was trying to do something that it wasn't supposed to do for 11 more hours, basically. Or it was trying to be 11 hours ago. Like it was 11 hours one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, it burned a lot of fuel. Ground controllers were able to send some commands and salvage the mission, get it into a stable orbit, but that orbit would not rendezvous with the International Space Station, and so they only accomplished a subset of their objectives. And in order to certify the spacecraft and the Atlas V to fly people on the next flight, the crewed flight test, they are redoing an uncrewed test, which is called Orbital Flight Test 2. And there you can see the mural, and that is the C3PF building.
And
It looks very fancy.
It does, yeah. It's pretty cool.
For kind of context, this is kind of, if you know where the press site at the Kennedy Space Center is, right across the street from the vehicle assembly building, it is to the left of the VAB if you're watching from the press site. And so this is kind of right behind the vehicle assembly building.
And if you've ever done any of the tours here at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, when you go by the VAB, they usually point this out.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool to see an actual capsule sitting outside of it, though. I was going to say that morning of the first OFT mission, it was very odd because I remember I'd gotten my shots. I had a couple streak shots that I'd taken, and it was a beautiful morning. It was one of those launches where it launched up into sunlight, and so we got that backlit plume and everything. Everything looked beautiful, and I had headed home to do some photo editing and stuff, and I started seeing what was coming out. Starliner is in the wording was, I was like, I'm not reading this right. It was like, it's not in the right orbit, but it's in a stable orbit. And I'm like, wait, no, this isn't happening. And it was like, people were speculating, can they even make it to the space station? And I'm like, oh no, you're just overreacting. And then lo and behold, they were not. That just shows you, shows you my level of, oh, hey, look at that. That's one of my
Yeah.
Nice.
I was traveling when it happened. I was at a train station and watching it on a small phone. And then there was this shot where we saw the mission control, and in the background you saw Starliner firing in the wrong direction, and I was like, "Wow, that animation looks odd.
Yeah.
That has to be some sort of bug."
Their animation
No, it
software
wasn't.
is clearly having a
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. Yeah, you assume there's something wrong with the animation. Yeah, because was it like doing the thing where it's like getting all like
Yeah,
jumbled around and stuff?
it was basically the thrusters were firing way more frequently than they were supposed to, trying to hold this weird attitude, and then at some point, yeah, it was basically trying to change its velocity in the wrong direction because it was 11 hours different from where in orbit it was expecting to be. I remember watching that, and the initial ascent was all nominal, as all the way up through spacecraft separation from the upper stage of the Atlas V. And you can actually see the video clip of Starliner separating from the Centaur. You can actually see the thrusters of Starliner start firing almost instantly, which is not necessarily. I mean, sometimes that happens when you're separating a spacecraft. Sometimes they use the thrusters to kind of separate it a little bit more, and maybe sometimes right away they like want their solar panels in the sun. So I didn't think we had any details on that. I don't even know if we know now whether or not that was nominal or not. But it was definitely a problem where those thrusters were firing in a way or in a frequency that they weren't supposed to be. And yeah, like you said, we got these weird messages like it's in a stable configuration. Well, what does that mean? But basically, at the end result, they got the spacecraft back, and now they're ready to redo the test and make sure everything's good to go before astronauts get on board.
Yeah, and Boeing, as well as the NASA commercial crew Twitter accounts, they've been putting out photos of the progress with mating Starliner to Atlas V. I haven't seen any in the last hour or two because we've been preparing for this. Is it up there? Is it on top of the second stage now?
Yep, and I think right on cue, I bet Michael shows the photo because they've got it mated to the top of the Centaur upper stage now. They might still be working on finishing that, but it is on top of the rocket. Right now, you see this picture is it rolling up to the vertical integration facility, which is directly adjacent to Space Launch Complex 41, the Atlas V launch complex. And you can see the rocket's got its 2 solid rocket boosters and the Centaur upper stage up top. And Starliner has now been mounted on top of that, so the stacking is pretty much complete. And we'll be getting a picture of that in a second. But they have completed that stacking operation. And also, a quick shout out to the NSF members Discord who pointed out it is the commercial crew and cargo processing facility. So I knew that third C was not capsule. So thank you to our members Discord for pointing that out to me. The only vehicle that uses that facility right now is Starliner. Dragon processing happens in SpaceX facilities. Sierra Nevada's Dream Chaser is not online yet. I don't think they will be using that facility either. But right now it is a Starliner processing facility. But yeah, rolled it out and stacked it on Atlas V.
It's sort of a vague memory because it was so early this morning, but I remember hearing Chris G talking about why they chose to go so early today, and it had to do with giving themselves ample time because typically Florida weather is pretty good early in the morning. Like in the middle of the night, our weather's pretty good. It's not always clear, but there's not a whole lot of wind blowing, not a lot of storms usually, and so it was like they started super early in case there were any snags because they were trying to get it out there to the rocket and also lift it up and put it on top in one go basically without having to go into the next night and risk if you go into the afternoon and we start having thunder showers, which I was out driving around today and there were definitely some big thunderstorm looking clouds around, and I'm sure they'll creep up on us here in the next couple hours. So I thought that was super interesting because it's like, man, why you got to do this so early in the morning?
Right, yeah.
There's a perfectly good reason.
Sometimes we get these media emails and we go, all right, the meetup time for this event is 2:45 a.m. and we go, oh boy, here we go. But it was super cool to see.
My sleep.
Yeah. But yeah, they did get it lifted up, and again, lifted up and done before the Florida afternoon in July, which is well done, Boeing and ULA on reaching that milestone. Because well done.
Yeah, let's see. Do we have the
good
one
luck for the flight
that shows it actually on top? I think we do. I know I saw one being lifted. I see Michael in in the text document. He's looking for it or something. What else is there to say? So we're launching it on July 30th. Hopefully everything stays on target. It's a little too early to make any guesses about weather. So don't ask about, oh, there we go. Don't ask about weather just yet. We're still about 2 weeks away. It's in the afternoon, right? It's like a 3 p.m. or so launch.
I believe so.
All right.
I see. Yeah, so and that's coming up on July 30th. So just a couple weeks. That is actually, like we mentioned, the next orbital launch from Cape Canaveral. We're in this bit of a lull here, but that is the next launch, and it is a big one. So, and I can say in advance, NASA Spaceflight will also be providing live coverage of that one, 100%. So,
yeah,
as always.
Yeah, I was ecstatic to see that I was going to be able to set some remotes, get up there close, and see Starliner nice and close. It is a beautiful spacecraft. I've seen one up close. I actually saw the OFT one sort of up close. Oh man, that was a long time ago. I was on a NASA social back then. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was like a year and a half ago. I think it was the CRS-19 NASA social, and they came and grabbed us. Like, hey, you guys want to go see Starliner? And what we got to do. So super excited about this mission. And do we know? We'll probably find out later. But do we know if they're taking anything? You know, I'm sure they'll use this opportunity to take a little bit of cargo up, won't they?
They'll put a couple things, nothing that's critical to the ISS. Any critical cargo goes up on all the commercial resupply missions on Cygnus and Dragon and stuff, but they'll put some, minor things. They might put on a little bit of fresh food or something, so assume, it's a risky mission, it's a test flight, but if it does get there successfully, the astronauts get treated to some fresh fruit and stuff like that occasionally. Or maybe just some personal artifacts that the crew has requested. I know Boeing is flying a bunch of flags from historically black universities and colleges and things like that as sort of flying things in space to bring back and then give back to their universities and stuff. I believe they're flying an American flag that will stay on the station and be returned by the crew of the crewed flight test. Sort of their own capture the flag thing after the big one from STS-135 to Demo 2. Boeing would also doing a sort of a mini version of that tradition. Yeah, so there'll be some minor things, but of course the main payload is the spacecraft itself and making sure that it can successfully rendezvous and dock and then return.
And what about this rearranging of capsules? Because aren't they moving the Crew Dragon capsule? They haven't done it yet, right? That's still coming up.
That is coming up on Sunday the 25th, I believe. They're going to relocate.
Live coverage, right?
Yeah, NASA TV will provide coverage of that. That'll be Crew Dragon Endeavour relocating from the forward port to the zenith port. So the port that faces the direction the station orbits, from that port to the one that faces up away from Earth, basically. And that is because the OFT-2 Starliner has to dock to the forward port. It was this weird requirement for both Crew Dragon and Starliner on their uncrewed docking to use that port. I don't remember why. I think it's just a software certification thing. But the two uncrewed demos had to use that port, so they'll move Crew Dragon to the other one.
Is it more or less difficult to reach that port?
I don't know. Maybe you have docking to the station isn't easy to begin with, so changing which port it is, I feel like there wouldn't be a substantial difference. I don't remember the exact details of why that port is needed for the uncrewed test. But going forward, Starliner will use either port that it needs to, just like Dragon does. That upward-facing port is the only one that the Canadarm can reach. So when a Cargo Dragon 2 comes up with cargo in the trunk, it has to use that port so the Canadarm can get it. But as far as the crew vehicles go, or a cargo vehicle that doesn't have anything in the trunk, they can use either of those two ports. And then, a couple years down the line, when Axiom starts adding some new modules to the station, that will come with even more docking ports, and then there'll be more places for Starliner and Dragon to dock whenever they need to.
I'm so glad they are adding docking ports to the ISS because it got really crowded up there the past few months. And you had all this talk about when they send up Starliner, but where would it go? And would it even fit the schedule? And it's really good that they're finally getting some new ports up there.
Yeah.
And that's for the American docking vehicles, which right now is only Starliner and Dragon. There are other American vehicles, Cygnus, that berth to the station. They get up close to the station, Canadarm grabs it and then puts it on a berthing port, which is different than a docking port. They're not compatible with one another. And then you have the Russian vehicles that dock autonomously on the Russian side with their own docking ports that are, again, different from the American ones. And so that's why different vehicles have different requirements for where they dock on station. Eventually, when Cargo Dream Chaser comes online, it will use the berthing ports that Cygnus uses, and those are the ports that Cargo Dragon 1 used to use. I don't think, in theory, Orion can dock to the same docking ports that Starliner and Dragon do. Obviously, Orion doesn't go to the ISS, but in theory, you could do that. But yeah, there's some differences there.
What's this little perforated thing around the circumference of
the black
trunk
part?
door? Yeah.
I believe that is akin to the fins on Dragon's trunk. It keeps the vehicle aerodynamically stable in the event of an abort, so a pad abort or an in-flight abort. You need to keep your center of pressure towards the back of the vehicle so it doesn't flip once it aborts. So I believe that ring of that black arrow surface is basically Starliner's version of that aerodynamic control surface. There's a nice close-up from this morning.
Yeah,
it just keeps the airflow and the center of pressure on that part of the vehicle and keeps it stable in the event of an abort.
Okay. Well, hopefully we don't have to see that.
Right. One of those things that hopefully we never have to actually use, but it's there for safety, of course.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, that's Starliner. Anything else about Starliner before we move on? Got some Hubble news.
Really quick, we can mention that Starliner was the one originally slated for the crewed flight test. When OFT2 had to happen, they relocated it or readjusted it, and I believe that the capsule that flew OFT, which of course was recovered successfully, and they'll make any changes they need to. But that spacecraft, I believe, will fly the crewed flight test now, unless they're building a third one. Off the top of my head, I don't remember which one. So now I shouldn't have just said anything because now I'm realizing I'm second guessing myself, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard that as well. That the one from OFT1 will be used on the first crewed one, but at the same time, things change. Sometimes things change, and I don't think there's any concern putting people on the physical capsule. I mean, this was, as far as we could tell, this was all a software thing. There's nothing inherently unsafe about the capsule that flew the first OFT mission. So if they want to reuse it and put some people on it, then I think that's fine.
Interestingly, they actually said if there was crew on board OFT, they would have been able to provide the corrective actions needed. Probably they would have actually been able to go to the ISS. But since we were controlling it from the ground, that it's different, and the ground controllers had to figure out what was happening and command the corrections from the ground.
Right.
If there were crew on board, they might have actually just salvaged the entire mission plan. But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because it had lost touch with the TDRS network, right?
Yeah. Part of it having this attitude control problem was it also lost connection to TDRS a couple times and resulted in some communications issue, which of course made it harder to solve the problem. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and had someone been on board, they could have hit the "I want to do this myself" button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Martin Kane, before we move on, wanted to know if they'll be taking anything back from the ISS on return. I don't know if do we know anything at all yet, or are we just going to wait on the press briefing, the pre-launch press briefing for stuff like that?
Off the top of my head, aside from those couple small things I mentioned earlier, don't think we know anything specific. And again, anything that's critical, like research hardware and stuff like that, has already got its a spot booked on a Cargo Dragon to come back or one of the crew vehicles. These test flights, they don't really book cargo to go on board because it's a test flight, and if something is off nominal, you don't want to also mess up your cargo manifest. So they won't have anything hugely important scheduled to go up or back on this flight.
Right. All right. Now, this is going to be some good news for everybody that likes pretty pictures from deep space. Yes. We have some good news from Hubble. Hit me with it. Whoever knows the most about it. Hit me with it.
Gosh. Well, all right. Well, we got to call up Goddard real quick. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
As of this morning, we've been following the story for a while. We've talked about it before. Hubble Space Telescope had a computer issue with its payload computer specifically that caused it to go into safe mode and stop science operations. NASA has now announced this morning that it has resumed science operations. It is collecting scientific data once again. I believe it is running on some backup computers now that they were able to successfully switch to. They were able to successfully identify what the root cause was, and very exciting to have Hubble back on board. Of course, it is well beyond its operational lifespan at this point. It is an aging telescope, but its successor, James Webb, is also launching pretty soon, actually, in a couple months. But until that happens, we would like to at least keep Hubble operating that long so we can have our sort of flagship observatory on orbit operating. And it's good to see Hubble back. Like we said, we don't have the ability to go up and service it, so all of this troubleshooting was done from the ground. We had 5 shuttle servicing missions with Hubble over the shuttle program, but of course we can't do that anymore. And just really excited to see Hubble back.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully they can keep it going. I mean, well past James Webb being deployed.
Of course,
I mean, it's they have different capabilities, right? Like James Webb is an infrared telescope, right?
yes. Yeah, they are actually very different missions. Like I said, James Webb is an infrared. Hubble is just a visible light telescope. And James Webb takes advantage of some new sensor technologies and things to, look even farther and have even more useful imagery come out of it. It's also got a much bigger mirror that's, folds up. You've seen that hexagonal grid mirror that will unfold once it's in orbit. So that gives you some more resolution and things like that. Very exciting to see that mission. And hopefully for a while, we'll have both of those telescopes operating at the same time and collecting their own different experiments.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember like the thing that I always think about with Hubble, and probably a lot of people do too, is that Hubble Deep Field image that was they just picked a super dark area of the sky and zoomed in on it and discovered that there were thousands of galaxies just in that tiny and what is it? It's like if you were to hold your fingers up, that portion of the sky is like less than a centimeter, right? It's
Right.
like much less than maybe like half a centimeter, and there's thousands of galaxies out there just in there.
Just that part of the sky, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine all these moments we could have with James Webb if it has some sort of this deep field moment on its own. That would be amazing.
Yeah, because
imagine if in one of those galaxies there's a star system, and in that star system there's a planet much like Earth with people. They look pretty much like humans, and they create one of these. Some of these humans are in this country called the United States, who made a space program called NASA, and then some nerds made a website called NASASpaceflight to talk about NASA. And right now they're having a show called NASASpaceflight Live, talking about how their own telescope is being worked on and back operational. In one of those galaxies, that's happening right now. Quote me on it.
and the name of their satellite is Wames Jeb.
That's the difference in a parallel universe.
Everything else is the same, but they call theirs Wames Jeb.
That's the only difference.
It's the only difference. Everything else is the same. Yeah. Oh man. Well, okay, so good. Wait, I had a question. Jake Gonder had a James Webb question. Okay, with the launch of James Webb Telescope coming up, will you interview someone involved with it? I'm sure John Mather, the senior project scientist, would love to do an interview. There's a good suggestion for a guest.
Talking to some people from James Webb, I think we can maybe work on that. We're always looking for some cool interviews and stuff for people on NSF Live or for people to interview for articles on the news site. So we'll keep an eye out for that. I'll see what we can do on that, Jake.
Yeah, and if you're out there and you're an expert of your field and we've never reached out to you, maybe just assume that we would love to talk to you if you work on Wames Jeb telescope.
God, I'm gonna say that by accident now. It's gonna mess me up.
Yeah, reach out to us. Actually, I mean, there's probably lots of people that maybe we're just not thinking of, or we don't know how to get in touch with you. Yeah, we love talking to people that know their stuff, All right, anything else before we move on to Big Shiny Rocket?
I think we got to talk about Big Shiny Rocket. It's Adrian's specialty. It's what he's here for.
That's why you're here. Yeah. So tell the people sort of what you do. We talked about it earlier, where you work with spreadsheets and stuff. But what is it that you're doing when there's some kind of Starship test going on?
Yeah, I was that one guy when somebody on the NASASpaceflight Discord said, "Wow, somebody should really time these vents." And I was like, "Yeah, I have vacation right now. I should do that." And from there, it snowballed, and now I'm the guy who is tracking every vent I can and try to predict when Starship will fire its engines.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get that quite good. Sometimes I'm pretty bad at that, but yeah.
When it's bad, you just blame SpaceX and say, "Oh, they changed what they were doing. It's not my fault. It's all SpaceX."
How should I predict SpaceX? I mean,
yeah,
right. Yeah, no, I think that's probably very accurate because there's been a lot of these test campaigns that have gone right by the book of what we expected, and then when they move it, when they move things around time wise, it's like, oh, okay, so they're trying something new.
Yeah, we had this the big shake up with the triple static fire of, I think it was SN9, where they basically changed the whole countdown sequence and everything was off.
Yeah.
But at least they fired it 3 times, so I got new data for that new sequence. Thank you, SpaceX.
Do you have like what's your level of confidence when it comes to the upcoming static fire and like seeing certain things and knowing, is it all new? Like, do you think it's going to be really similar to Starship? Will we be able to predict when the ignition is going to be, or what do you think?
Yeah, I will do my best, but I think some stuff will stay the same. For example, the recondenser, I mean, they will use methane and liquid oxygen again, so the recondenser probe will turn on before they start the serious countdown operations, as well as the skirt vent. We saw it with these cryo tests that their skirt already got a venti again. So yeah, there will be some cues that will stay the same. There will be some that might be gone. But yeah, that's the fun of the countdown, to find out these new events that might help to predict this beast of a rocket.
Yeah, and one of the questions has been like we're used to on Starship, we're used to seeing a tri-vent. Will it be 33 separate vents all around the outside?
No, I sadly don't think we will see that kind of. What would it even be with the current engine count? How would we even call it? I don't know.
Yeah,
what's the try is 3. What's the equivalent for 33? Don't know if there's a prefix for that. And would you even be able to tell? It might just look like vent from continuously around the perimeter of the vehicle. I'm not sure you would see 33 vents.
Right.
I don't even think we would see that kind of vent with the booster, since I think why we see it with Starship is because there's an interstage there, so they kind of need to vent it out. But with Super Heavy, there isn't an interstage, so they might be just able to vent it out. And we saw actually next to one of the Raptors during the cryo test that there was some sort of vent going on below the vehicle. So this might be the new dry vent. We will see.
Oh yeah, could be.
See, this is why we have Adrian on. He notices these things. we're all of us here. It's like, oh, we have no idea what's going to happen. And go, Adrian's like, actually, it might just be this.
Yeah. Let's see. I know that there was a certain aft flap that showed up that had curved thermal protection tiles on it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And if y'all saw the
Getting
daily video,
closer to orbit.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
It looks so refined.
Yeah.
Like it looks good.
It's starting to really come together. Oh yeah, that looks great.
There it is. There's of course a photo from Mary, and it actually, I don't know. In one photo I saw, the thickness at the curved part is way thicker than like the normal tiles, which kind of makes sense in that sort of area of potential weakness. You want to make sure you have enough insulation there.
Oh yeah.
But super cool looking, and that's what they're gonna have to do to the whole heat shield for Starship 20. There you go. That picture is what I was definitely talking about.
Wow.
You can see You see at the end it kind of tapers down to the normal thickness.
Uh-huh.
So that's
Yeah, it's like
interesting to
twice
see.
as thick, it looks like. Just
Yeah.
ballparking it.
And again, those tiles are made actually here in Florida. They make the silica material, the raw material, at the Citgo Road facility in Cocoa, Florida, where they, at once upon a time, were building a Starship Mark II prototype. And then elsewhere here in Florida, they have a facility that takes that raw material and basically forges it into the hexagonal. I can pronounce words. The hexagonal shape of a tile, and then they get shipped off to Boca Chica and mounted onto Starship test vehicles.
Yeah, and also we've got the preparation of Booster 4 for stacking, right?
Yes.
And Booster 4, if you remember, is supposedly going to be the orbital flight booster.
Yeah.
And obviously, things
Supposed
change
to.
in Boca Chica. Yeah, thoughts on that? How close are we? Anybody want to make guesses?
Adrian, you got a spreadsheet for this?
Yeah.
I feel like I can only lose here, but yeah, there's still many milestones to clear before they can finally go to that orbital attempt. Mm-hmm. So what I would do right now is track these milestones, look at them, where they might be checked, and as soon as many of these are checked, then I would start thinking about a timeline or a date for that orbital flight.
Yeah, I think personally the big question, well, from there's technical readiness and then there's, bureaucratic readiness, which are both going to be big parts of Starship making an orbital launch attempt. In the technical readiness, we have Booster 3, which is going to have a static fire no earlier than Monday. That'll be part of sort of learning some things about the super heavy design. Very possible that happens and then SpaceX goes, wait, we need to make tweaks. Booster 4, you're now a ground test article. Booster 5 is going to orbit. The odds of that happening is not zero. So we're gonna wait for Booster 3 to clear its test campaign before we decide if Booster 4 will actually be the one to attempt orbit. Right. But of course, that is the current plan. Booster 3 testing is going to be a big part of it, and obviously you have to stack then Booster 4, have to stack Starship 20. Starship 20 needs its full heat shield complement. Both vehicles need all of its Raptors, which we know the number of Raptors in Boca Chica is growing basically by the day at this point, but they need a lot more. They've only added the one vacuum Raptor in Boca Chica. At least only one has been spotted, so we know we need at least 2 more of those. And then a bunch of more sea level Raptors. So we're waiting for that. And then stuff on the ground side, you need ground support tanks. I believe GSE Tank 5 appeared out of the high bay. Mary spotted that today. So they are making progress to that end, but they still need to finish the tank farm. They need to finish the launch mount, the launch tower, and I'm sure dozens of other smaller things that are slightly less visible but around the launch site need to be ready for that orbital launch attempt. Once all that's done, then we have the bureaucratic side of things, and the FAA needs to approve the launch. Some news came out recently that the FAA was basically warning SpaceX, by the way, you guys went and built this launch tower before we approved your launch site plans, so don't come to us and say, hey, if we need you to change something about this tower for any reason, like, don't get mad at us because you built it too early, It was basically that. Hopefully nothing comes from that. That would be a delay, but
hopefully nothing that it can't be fixed as is,
Right, yeah.
Where they don't have to take the whole thing down.
Yeah, some people were saying like, oh, what if they have to take the tower down? I'm like, I don't know how likely that is. The tower is a tower, and but we'll wait and see. The FAA, yeah, that's this report that we're talking about. There's this letter from the FAA. What is to actually come from that remains to be seen, just because depends on how the FAA approval process goes. Right now, they're still working on preparing a draft environmental assessment, basically documents the environment surrounding the launch site regarding launch operations, how you will handle exclusion zones, which of course is important for the proximity of South Padre Island. How will that be affected? It's not just like environmental things like the wildlife in the area, which is part of it, but it's also the surrounding human environment and the people who live in the general area of the launch site and how those launch operations will affect that. So they're working on preparing the draft environmental assessment. Once that gets published, there is a minimum 30-day comment period where the public can comment on the draft and voice their opinion on concerns and things like that. And then following that, they will complete the environmental assessment. And only once that is done, can the FAA issue a launch license to actually start conducting launches. That's why all of that has to happen prior to an orbital launch attempt. So at the very bare minimum, obviously there's some time between all those steps, but at the bare minimum, we are at least 30 days from an orbital launch attempt, and that 30-day countdown does not start going down until the draft assessment comes out. So basically, the first orbital flight is always 30 days away, if you want to make the Falcon Heavy 6 months joke. But that's what we're waiting on the bureaucratic side, you know?
Yeah.
I love about this letter that it came out came to SpaceX in May, and since then they decided, oh, we got this warning. Yeah, let's stack that tower to about 100 meters or so, because we don't care about that warning.
Also, just a really quick thing. The note said that the FAA had learned of the progress on the orbital launch tower via publicly available video footage.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are lots of video sources in Boca Chica. We are one of them, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
That's how we found out about it.
Did we do that?
Sorry, SpaceX.
Yeah, you know.
Not sorry, they went and built it anyway. This was from May, look at the date on this letter, May 6th.
I wonder
2 months
if
ago.
If this is sort of like a, rolling the dice, like within SpaceX, they're like, we're pretty sure that we're going to be good on this. We're going to get the FAA approval,
Right.
and we just want to get the thing built. And
obviously, like building a tower isn't it doesn't endanger public safety or anything like that.
Right.
If they were conducting launches before those were approved, that's a completely different story.
Right.
But there you go, Michael. Publicly available video footage. And this actually ties into another part that I want to get you guys' opinions on. So,
Okay.
People have been saying, this environmental assessment still has to come out. The FAA has to determine how exactly they're going to handle launches from Boca Chica. It is not that far from South Padre Island. Now, the only comparison we really have is the Saturn V program. And while that happened on the Kennedy Space Center, there were people working elsewhere on that facility on a not dissimilar distance that South Padre is from the orbital launch site in Boca Chica. If you go back to like the engineering buildings and stuff that are in and around the vehicle assembly building, that's where people were during Saturn V launches.
Mm-hmm.
Starship and Super Heavy are supposed to launch much more frequently than Saturn V's do, so that's another consideration. There are also sonic booms to deal with because the booster comes back and lands, whereas Saturn V did not have that problem. The sonic booms propagated away from the ground. Yeah. So all of that being considered, so there's some concerns that what if the FAA literally does not approve orbital launches from Boca Chica? Like, listen, this is too big of a problem. But you bring up this point of SpaceX is doing all of this because they feel confident that they will be approved. That doesn't mean they won't have to tweak things about how they do operations or how they build things, but they're confident that they will be able to make it work and collaborate with the FAA on making it, suitable operations and operate it responsibly. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Is it foolish to do all this construction when there's a risk that the FAA literally says, listen, we can't find a way to be able to legally certify this? Or is it reasonable to assume that the FAA and SpaceX will come to an agreement on how to make Boca Chica work?
Well,
I think go ahead, Adrian. Take it away.
I think since the FAA approved many test flights before, at some point they maybe would have warned SpaceX, oh, by the way, we most likely won't approve your orbital launch here. So I don't think they would just let that PR disaster happen with letting SpaceX build for 1 or 2 years there and then telling them, oh, by the way, you did this all for nothing. So yeah, at some point I would expect them to say, oh, stop, don't do this.
Yeah, and what is the distance? Does anybody know? Is it comparable to like 39A from Titusville or something? Because there you're talking about like 13, 14 miles.
Well, let me check. From the orbital launch site to South Padre Island?
Yeah, because I'm wondering if so there's going to be a lot of sonic booms and then of course, the ever-present possibility that one might go boom. I wonder if there would be like a new regulation as far as like windows go on the the area of town closer to it, and would the town sort of kind of eat that cost because of the potential tourism that's going to come and has been coming because of space. It's not like nobody ever heard of South Padre Island actually,
Right.
before this, but
Oh, there you go. See, I was about to say, it's about 5 miles from South Padre Island to the orbital launch site. And
holy
for
moly.
comparison, I will tell you the distance from 39A, where the majority of what's it called? Saturn V launches happened. Well, if Google Earth will Google Earth is not cooperating with me right now. There it goes.
Yeah,
39A
that's much closer.
to. So it's only like 3 miles. There you go. Thank you, Michael. It's only like 3 miles from 39A to the press site. 5 miles gets you to like. It's almost to the ITL Causeway to 39A. So, Stephen, you and I know where that is. I know the general
Right.
public doesn't help that much. But
It's
maybe from. Yeah. So 5 miles is farther than it is from 39A to the press site. And there you go.
Okay, so
and
we're
that's
talking about
just under
some
12
pretty-
miles to like Titusville.
Yeah, so that's a much bigger difference than I expected. Of course, and that's to the southernmost tip of South Padre. But yeah, man.
But remember, there were people at the press site for 39A for Saturn V launches. Like, people can be safely closer than that, and that's only 3 miles, so you get a couple extra miles to the general population area. But there's that distinction between people that work at the Space Center, who obviously probably don't mind a rocket launch, and the media that are there for the purpose of the rocket launch, and people who just happen to live in South Padre Island who might be, not as happy about it. But I don't think it's safe to say that South Padre is a safety risk. Like, it doesn't seem logical to evacuate South Padre Island as a safety risk when it's farther away than people stood from the Saturn V. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking more along the lines of like property damage. Not that people are going to be hurt, but if I like, is it a thing where if there's a sonic boom on Tuesday and
Right.
all the none of the windows break, then you're good for the next year? Or is it like when you have a lot of sonic booms, then eventually you're going to have to start thinking about, well, we need to reinforce our windows at least,
Yeah, that is the other criteria, is that sonic boom thing, which is the big difference between a Saturn V launch and a super heavy Starship stack. Because the launch noise from like the liftoff noise will be comparable. Starship might be a little bit louder, but there's not a 1-to-1 comparison with like the number of engines and things like that. So it's not quite. It's not like, oh, there's 33 engines, it's going to be 33 times as loud as one Raptor. That's not how it works.
Right.
But it will probably be only slightly louder than a Saturn V, maybe not even noticeably. But that sonic boom is definitely something to see if that affects things. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to. I want to feel confident that they'll be able to conduct launches without evacuating, South Padre Island. But yeah.
I don't think that. I don't think. I mean, I just don't think so. That's just, and that's based on nothing. Honestly, I don't think that's going to have to happen.
I would also like to ask when new map data. Thank you, Michael.
When new map data, yeah.
Back when the launch facility looked like a concrete slab, doesn't really look like that anymore.
I think you can still see Starhopper being built there, right?
Like back
Or
at
is
the
it even
production
older?
site, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. It is old.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that we got some Elon tweets that had confirmed a couple things for us. One being the 33 Raptor configuration render. Do we have that?
Yeah.
I see. Looks like Michael's going to grab that real quick. So there was a render, and Elon commented on it that it was very accurate. And this is a good Twitter account to follow. This person does great work.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So look at that. Yeah, and that Elon said is very accurate.
So
It's
and it makes sense that 3-engine cluster, just like they have on Starship, and then just rings of I don't know. Mike, I bet
Thank
Mike
you,
will know.
Michael.
Actually, or well, I say you guys probably know too. The center cluster, there's like the 3, and then the ring right around it. Are those all gimbaling, or are only the 3 center ones expected to gimbal?
I think the current expectation is that the center and the middle ring would gimbal. It also would make sense since it looks like, if this render is correct, that the center and the outer, like the middle ring, is lowered, so they have a little bit more space to gimbal. At least it looks like it from this angle.
Hey, Michael,
there are 10
written
engines
there?
in that second
there's
ring.
10. Yeah, the secondary ring does have 10.
I'm counting it like over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's definitely 10. Okay, I knew it was 33 because he said that in the tweet. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Michael, you're no John Madden, man. Yeah. So, and what was the other thing? Let me see. Some of these design trades are still open, but still,
Yeah,
will be
basically
resolved
talking
soon.
about
What
how
was that about?
they're kind of converging on what they think the design for the initial operational Super Heavy and Starship vehicles will look like. There's people asking about, having another. When are you going to give us a Starship update? Maybe that means that once they close out some more design choices, they'll feel. I mean, I understand not wanting to give like a presentation when the design will be outdated 24 hours later. Guess that kind of defeats the purpose. So I can understand that, but hopefully, in the not too distant future, I mean, we have these renders in place, and if Elon says that's very accurate, it's like, all right, at this time on this date, this was what the design looked like. We take no responsibility to any design changes made after the fact.
Yeah.
Maybe he really wants a full stack for that. Like, I could imagine Elon wanting a full stack behind him during the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see if we have any questions. Got a couple queued up here. Oh, this we already. No, we didn't answer this. Okay, Jacob Halamaki said, "How many Raptors does Booster 3 have?" And at this moment, it's just 3, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And that's as many as we expect to be on there.
Probably. I mean, it's hard to know what exactly they'll do as a static fire campaign. If there's going to be single engine static fires, triple engine static fires, will they add more engines after that? Will they static fire these 3 engines and then take them off and put other engines on and then static fire those? I mean, there's a lot of things they can do with the ground test articles, so don't know exactly. But right now, it looks like they only have 3.
Maybe even SpaceX doesn't know at this point, and they really want the first data from the first static fire before they decide, okay, we might need more engines here.
Right.
And remember, they're over on the suborbital site on those test stands now that can't really support a lot of Raptors. You can't put 33 Raptors on those stands, I don't think. That doesn't mean they can't do maybe slightly more than 3, but right now they've only done 3 with the Starship flights, so maybe that's their limit, and maybe then they'll be limited to doing only 3 engines.
And we saw these suborbital stands getting a pretty significant hit from 3 engines.
Yeah, exactly.
In the past, yeah.
Louis Viereth says, if during propellant loading of a full Starship stack, one of the booster tanks lost pressure, would the booster buckle under the load of the fueled Starship?
SN3?
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think of what was the Starship prototype that did that? It was
SN3, right?
Was it 3? I always get them all mixed up. I know 4 is the one that detonated. 3 must be the one where the bottom tank crumbled.
Yeah. So that would most likely happen.
Yeah. R. Stewart has a crazy thought. Could the booster catch system also be used as a launch assist catapult?
Oh, jeez.
No. What an idea.
Well, actually, I think we know the answer for sure because it catches it using the grid fins, and the grid fins won't be deployed during launch, so there's nothing for the arms to hold on to. At least that's
unless
they
were.
That's jeez.
Well, that's real fast.
Hey, the N1 did that. Had grid fins on the bottom for attitude control. There have been some marks that might have done that. Grid fins for ascent control, but I don't think that's happening. But someone should try it in Kerbal anyway, just in case. Now I want to see it.
I'm pretty sure if I look at the members Discord, somebody will do it.
Yeah.
Real quick from Tamara Weens, what sonic boom will they go They'll go supersonic over the Gulf, not inland. But we're talking about when they re-enter, right? When we're talking about the sonic booms affecting.
Right, so just like when Falcon 9 boosters come back and we get the sonic booms here on the ground, when the super heavy booster comes back to land at the launch site, that will produce a sonic boom. It'll actually probably produce 2 sonic booms. Falcon 9 produces 3 because the edges of the landing leg give it another leading edge that creates the compression wave. Super heavy will probably only have the engines and the grid fins, so only 2. But twin sonic booms on the way down. And that's only for the super heavy booster. When Starship comes down, where it lands, that will probably only produce 1 because it'll be belly flopping, so it really only has like the 1 leading edge. And then wherever that's landed, you could get a sonic boom as well.
You're losing your audio.
All right. And then I like this question from Martin Kane.
Gone robots. Stephen, continue.
Yeah. So, are they going to have So Sisters for this, or are they more like Sobots? And I think the
Hang on,
question
it's our audio.
It's everybody?
Oh, then.
Oh.
So that's when we go 1 minute past 4:30.
They're saying cha-cha-choppy.
Hey, check. Can you hear me now? Nope. Can they hear me now? Hey, chat. How's it going? Sorry about that. Don't know what that hiccup was, but it's time to wrap up the show anyway. Sorry about that, folks. At least it didn't happen till the very end of the show, so we can wrap up anyway. If you would like to ask any questions that we did not get to during the show, our social media handles are as follows. Adrian, with his debut on the NSF live show, is at BC Car Counters. Did I get that right? He says yes. Okay, cool. That is his Twitter handle, so go ahead and you can send any questions his way. Also, Stephen Marr is at SpaceCoast_Steve. And then myself is TG Mets fan 98. So if we have a question we didn't get to during the show, you should hit us up on Twitter, and we'll try to answer some questions over there as always. Also, just thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the super chats and the membership support. Want to give a big thank you to our top tier members who go above and beyond with the support, and it allows us to do these shows and do all these live streams. So just want to give an extra thank you to all of you and all of your support. And thank you everyone for just tuning into this show. Sorry about the hiccup there at the end, but we talked about a lot of cool stuff. Stay tuned for more Boca Chica coverage. We've got Booster 3 testing no earlier than Monday. We've got a New Shepard launch from Texas no earlier than Tuesday. And of course, all the daily update videos from Mary and the robots down in Boca Chica every single day. So stay tuned for all of that. And thank you so much for watching. And we will see you all next time.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
Our chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight down to off. Say again, SC off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.